We are recording, so we can begin. Welcome, everybody. I think everybody here knows everybody so far. Or do we want to go around the room one more time very quickly? And welcome back, Ed. He is thrilled. So Ed has stepped in as of, what, Friday or Monday as the interim assistant DPW director, in addition to all of his other duties, as Bob Lewis has moved on to Framingham. So he is back on the rail trail. Welcome back, Ed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
All right, let's get started. Did everybody receive the emails that I sent, that James sent me? I forwarded out.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And just so you all know, we do have somebody in the audience watching. So Ashley, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or just pop them in Q&A, and we can go from there. All right, Fisher Street Trailhead. Any updates? How's that looking? Looks good to me. Anybody have any updates, concerns, comments?
I think it looks pretty good as well, considering that we kind of pulled that off, you know, within our own forces pretty quickly. I'm pleased with the plantings. Eversource did all those beautiful serviceberry trees and the nice, beautiful plantings in the mulch bed. That was a gift from them. So that was a nice kumbaya project. And I think it looks good. I think it could use maybe a little backblading because, you know, again, it's going to take time for that loose stone to kind of compact a little bit. So it's more of a firmer surface. But I think we do have the accessibility component tied in with the pavement and the hatching. I think it's pretty good. You know, I was there the other day, took a walk, and I saw a couple cars there. So it seems like every time I drive by, there's one or two cars there. So it seems like the size is appropriate, and yeah, pleased with how it looks.
Ed, a couple of questions. Early on, and I have not been there for several weeks now, I think, they hadn't quite finished with the railing on the far side of the parking. Is that now installed?
I can check for you. I'm not
It's the
positive.
same as it was last we met. So it just needs to be continued over to be in front of the parking area.
Yeah, I think it was Bob or someone mentioned that was still planned, and I wasn't sure whether it was installed. The other thing, and we can hold off on it, but when we get to trail maintenance, there's an issue of elevation of the parking area relative to and of the driveway relative to the trail and potential washout. So we'll get to that, and the solution is on the trail, not in that trailhead area itself, but it's covered if you had a chance to read Robert Wideneck's review of the trail surface.
Dimitri?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a plan for signage for that parking lot?
Deb, is that part of your overall signage plan? Would that be part of it?
Are you asking me? I don't know any of this. So you all probably have a lot more information for me. What was shared before from Bob Lewis? I don't know. I have no idea.
I think it's planned, but has not been worked out, is my understanding. And Deb, I know you've been working on a kind of uniform signage effort, and I don't know if this area has come up at all in that discussion.
It has not. We are still, we're putting together the Trails Committee again. We've been working towards that, and you know, we're going to be looking to them for some of these locations and ideas. So not formally part of our discussion yet.
I think all that's needed is a very simple sign that says, you know, something like rail trail parking, or, you know, something like that. Because I think people don't miss this. I was with a group of cyclists that we used the trail, and then we went on to elsewhere, but they didn't realize that that parking lot was open and available, and parked where the, you know, down at the by the canoe launch where I guess they're used to parking. So I said, hey, you can use this parking lot, but I think without a sign, people don't necessarily realize that it's now open and usable. If there on occasions when there aren't, other cars already there.
Great.
Boy, that doesn't sound like Needham to me, Dimitri. I see people park just about anywhere, everywhere, all the time. I'm surprised to hear that, but I think I understand that a sign might be necessary, but I'm surprised to hear someone would avoid an open parking lot and park down below, but I give your friends credit. I give your friends credit. They must be energetic.
Excellent. Let's say item number 3 is the rail trail extension at Chestnut Street. James, this one is all you.
Well, it's been a somewhat frustrating process to get from that World Tech kind of feasibility pre-design study to move forward. But I've been in touch with Kate Fitzpatrick, and it is now, I believe, on the select board's agenda. Have to go back and look at the date. I think it's sometime in May or early June. As you recall, there are 4 options that World Tech has outlined. They're expensive, although I had conversations early on with folks at DPW, and we both thought it could be done a lot less expensively than estimated here. But anyway, that's in process, and I know DPW is down several people, and I think that's a major hurdle. I mean, no blame involved, but it is frustrating because this report is now 20 months old, and there's been not much progress. But Kate has indicated, and I think the select board has indicated, that this is a priority to extend the trail to Chestnut Street. I believe it's in the formal goals the select board has adopted. And I'll just mention that a graduate student did this paper on the options, and I sent it along to Stacy, and she circulated it. It's interesting. It's not from the Bay Colony Rail Trail Association, and in fact, I personally don't necessarily agree with his conclusions. I think he's dismissive of options that actually may be viable. But anyway, I think it's worth reading. It's I think under 10 pages, and it's a thoughtful summary of the options and his take on going forward. So I'm not sure that there's a lot more to say. I didn't even realize that Robert Lewis had left DPW, and he was my contact on this, and yet wasn't able to get motion, forward motion on it. Ed, I hate to look at you because I know you have a million things on your plate, and this is job number 4 for you, but I'm hopeful that it can move forward in the next few months, at least with identifying a preferred alternative. I mean, that's the next step. And then for formal design and engineering, I believe there's enough here to, in the World Tech report to do that. It requires input from a variety of folks, DPW, other stakeholders, abutters, and so forth. But that was the plan long ago, and it just hasn't moved forward.
James, you mentioned priority. Whose priority is it?
Well, it would be,
Select board.
Yeah, so, in the select board goals.
Oh.
Yeah, they've now officially adopted it as an official priority for the select board.
Aha, very good.
So I would say, James, that the select board meeting is happening. So this is when they will discuss with the public as well as yourself and others if you attend. And that will be the determining factor to hopefully get a course of action and have them continue the study. So it sounds like things are happening. from my understanding, just coming in, I believe the date's June 14th, where World Tech will make that presentation. And if it is a selectman goal, that is the vessel right there. So it
Okay,
sounds like it's all coming together.
I had a different understanding because way back when Tony was with us, the idea was to have community meetings and almost like a working group to make a recommendation to the select board. But maybe that's changed, and maybe this is the opportunity. I'm unclear, and you may be right now. I don't know. I'll follow up with Kate and see if that is a decision-making point or not. I thought there was preliminary discussion that would have to take place, because I'm not sure anybody has looked at at the World Tech stuff very carefully. And like I don't know if DPW has a strong idea about what makes the most sense, for example.
Well, I think DPW has vetted the World Tech and wants to hear from the board as to what their preferred option would be so that we can continue to move forward. So I would say, James, yeah, let's follow through with Kate. Let the advisory committee here do their work. And again, we need to work quickly. If you want a community meeting, that would be the next couple of weeks. So what does that look like? And how does that look like is for us to determine right now, I guess, right? To get ahead of this.
Yeah.
The time is now.
I don't think, Ed, we wouldn't do a community meeting in the next couple of weeks. Unless I misunderstood, we've got town meeting that starts next week for the next couple of weeks.
So
Yeah,
sorry,
and
about 22
everybody,
months have passed, but it seems like the time is right now. So
even
I'm
though I
kind of
think
coming in a
that
little
there's,
late, but it seems like we got to strike pretty quickly here. So
I mean,
people
I
know
would
about
say
this.
that there is definitely support on the select board to do
Right.
this. It definitely got onto the goals, and now it's a matter of I would say, let's, speak with, I'll reach out to members that are, on the board. I think they know that this is something that's of a high level of interest and priority. The question will be, once they have their discussion, is how does it fit into the capital plan, and, how does it get funded? I'm assuming CPA request would be the likely source of funds. Hopefully to put it in position to apply for the next round of CPA request, which would be in the fall by December 1st. So that's what I think would be lining up for.
Well, just to mention one other potential, and I was going to kind of add this to the agenda, but it may be appropriate now. There is a special round of Mass Trails grants that was announced, excuse me, unfortunately due very quickly in the middle of May. On the other hand, I've written a few of these and successful ones, a couple $100,000 in Medfield. It's possible we could apply for the next phase of planning design work for the Chestnut Street extension. It would have been helpful to know what the preferred option of the town is before applying. On the other hand, there is a feasibility study completed. We may be able to be very nuanced about the precise plan. And what's really good about this current round of Mass Trails is they have a lot of money. So it's up to $500,000 per grant.
Wow. James, I would support, if anybody, looking to the rest of the committee, you approaching Kate, and, because I know that you are capable of submitting a grant proposal. I think that would probably be a good thing to do. Kate can probably give you a better idea of the board's thought process and her thought process and her senior management team's thought process as far as the direction of the proposals. And at which time, if you could do a giddy up on getting funding, that would be wonderful if we could, get that application in place.
I had approached Kate last week, but with a different project in mind. The next stage, and this isn't even on our agenda yet, but there's a feasibility study that is funded for and you know this well, John, for a bridge connecting Newton and Needham, a pedestrian / bicycle, possibly / bus connection at the point of the old railroad bridge. And I had asked Kate about applying for the $500,000 for the next phase of that. Her response was, we don't even have the feasibility study yet, and that the Chestnut Street project is on the board's agenda. But I think it is worth going back to her now. So that was a negative response on the Newton Needham project, but I think it is worth going back to her on this project, on the Chestnut Street extension. So I'll make an attempt, but I think she's feeling kind of overwhelmed, and I think DPW is overwhelmed. So it is difficult to, but I'm happy to do the major part of the grant writing, and it's not that heavy lifting.
I mean, I would support that. Any other opinions on this? Because I think that, and I would be more than happy to speak with Kate on behalf of this committee's discussion with this right now, because it seems to make sense if there's money available, and we know that this is already on the select board's goals. We know that it's favorable, and we will be moving into the how are we going to fund this part of this. Whatever pressure we can take off of CPA and or any other funding sources would be greatly enhanced and appreciated. So I would support you making contact with Kate and just saying, I think that we're the advisor. Are we, can we act on this right now, Stacy, is the question. I think the timing, makes it imperative that with what James is saying, the grant requests are due, I think you said mid-May.
Yeah, I think it's
somewhere. Okay. Do we want to give that a shot?
Yeah. No reason not to.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, great.
I guess that's a yes, James. Go.
Okay, I'll be in touch with her today, and we'll
Great.
see. I mean, she's extremely busy too, so
There's
it's
no question about it. And, I'll tee it up as well to her so that, she knows you're coming, and, or that, but I think this would be a great move.
great. Thanks.
And just to add, Kate is pursuing that, James. We've had multiple conversations with state, MassDOT, with different agencies, and we are actively pursuing the Highland Ave corridor project. It's just not ready yet. It's going to be in the tip, but we all have talked about that. So that isn't a moot point. It's something we're all working on
Great.
right now. So
That's great.
Just to clear the air.
Yeah. And James, just to add, because I am in communication with folks in Newton, there is a strong interest from Newton's leadership for the multimodal. That's ultimately what was agreed to. They have a strong interest in that because of all the construction that is in process on Needham Street, and so they're looking for that release.
Right. As you may know, the Needham is in the process of hiring someone to write the scope for that for the bridge project. That's how down DPW is of staff. They're actually hiring someone with that project and others in mind. And I don't know the status of that hiring. I don't know if they've interviewed or what, but hopefully soon.
So I'm not confused there. Are we still talking about just one bridge project for transportation of bikes, people walking, and buses? Is that what we're talking about every time we say this?
Yes, multimodal.
Okay, but I just
Yes.
thought Kate said that we don't have that's not even on the agenda.
No, there's a $200,000 state earmark that Cindy Cream, senator from Newton, and our Senator Roush were able to secure for the study of multimodal transit on the right of way, which includes rebuilding a bridge over 128. There's interest because of the redevelopment of Muzzy, the ongoing redevelopment of Wexford, and the Northland project, and now a large 400 unit 40B on Needham Street in Newton. There's an interest in having an additional release or option for moving people across, the two communities and across that right of way. And so it's an opportunity.
And John, just so you know, the actual language in the legislation is not multimodal, but post that language, there's been negotiations, and I think there is agreement to modify that. Last time I spoke to Kate, it was a little bit unclear whether there had to be any kind of legislative amendment in order to allow it. But anyway.
No, my understanding from speaking with both Senator Cream and Senator Roush is that the language has been agreed to and that multimodal is incorporated into the language for the earmark. That was the only way the money was going to be released. So that's been worked, from my understanding, that's been worked out. I don't know where it is.
I haven't in front of me, and it's bike and pedestrian, but post that budget, it has been agreed. Anyway, it's going to happen, so that's great.
Okay. Moving on. Anything else before I move on? Good. Next up, trail surface and drainage. James, this is the one that you wanted me to put up on the agenda, correct?
Yes. So you circulated a short observation report from Robert Wideneck, and just to tell you who he is, he used to be with Beals and Thomas. He's done several rail trail feasibility studies, and he's the head of the rails committee, rail trail committee in Holliston, and he's now retired from Beals and Thomas. He's been volunteering his time to help on the Medfield Trail, and I'm working closely with him there, and that's going to be done in the next 2 months, which is very exciting. And he agreed to, help assess our trail surface and drainage issues, kind of informally. This is not from Beals and Thomas or anything like that. It's his observations, and Stacy circulated his report. The reason I wanted to share this is we've been talking about the need for maintenance on the trail surface for some time, and this is quite specific as to the locations and the needs. And so we probably do not have the budget in the annual $14,000 a year line item that DPW now has for the trail to do everything on here. But I do think it's important that we understand what the needs are, and he does not cost this out, but it's actually not as expensive as one would think, because we are doing some of this now in Medfield, and there are a variety of approaches to contracting for it. But in any case, it does require adding material, particularly where the trail itself is lower than the adjacent land, and that includes the new trailhead area where the parking area is slightly higher than the trail, and the issue is washout. You don't want rain to wash away the stone dust. He also notes that the stone dust spec was probably not ideal when it was first installed. And if we do add material, there's a particular spec that has worked extremely well in Holliston and Milford and a number of other trails, and we're using it in Medfield as well, because it binds better and is much more durable. Apparently, parts of the Needham Trail where there have been washouts, and it's less stable because it's very coarse material and not enough fines. Anyway, it's worth looking at this, and I guess my request would be, how can we get this on the town/DPW's agenda? Is it necessary to contract it out, or is this something DPW can do? And then, of course, how would it be paid for? Because this is probably considerably more than $14,000, and that's the annual maintenance budget. And there's a lot of other things that have to happen, tree work and mowing and so forth, with that budget.
Stacy, I guess I'll take this one.
Sorry, yes.
So yeah, James, again, I haven't seen the report, but I think the action steps would be, I would lean upon you to put a cost to all these things that you mentioned. And we'll advocate for an increase to the operating budget this fall when we present to the town manager. As you mentioned, the rail trail entire budget for the maintenance is 14,000. That is spoken for entirely by tree work and flail mowing the shoulders. So I'm sure there'll be appetite to discuss increasing that budget, but I would need some cost estimates, as you mentioned, contracts, contacts, specs, and just some numbers as to what we'd like to do. And we can certainly advocate for that for sure. And like you said, the budget is entirely spoken for on tree service and then mechanical mowing twice a year to keep all the shoulders free. As we all know, last year during COVID, schedules were tight with contractors, so we went in late season and really mowed down and did all the tree work late November of last year and spent that entire budget within a couple weeks out there. So but yeah, I think, you know, after riding the bike with the kids there for years, you're right, our stone is a little loose. And probably, as you mentioned, if it needs to be added material, we just need to kind of gain some costs, and we have some time to work together on that.
Okay, great. I'll be in touch with you, Ed, on that, and I'll ask Robert to come up with cost numbers.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have not been on the trail in a while. What is how would you rate the condition of the trail today?
Adam, do you want to jump in on this one?
So I think that the conditions that are mentioned in that report are not new necessarily. The Fisher Trailhead, okay, the trailhead part, yes, but you know, later a little bit further down, you know, north where it kind of tends to get flooded out, where there's that ditch. That's been the case for as long as we've lived here, and you just, you know, when it rains, you wear boots for that part. So I think in general, I mean, the condition is, I guess, we walk on it every day. But I agree that these are areas, especially when the weather isn't great, that, you know, would be beneficial. Like as an example, what people had done for a while was to put out mats, like front door mats, kind of in that flooded out area. Okay, you can get over it. Not ideal. So the thing I was thinking, James, as I read the report is, what do you think the frequency of these improvements would need to be moving forward? So once this has kind of been regraded, is it a every few years thing? Is it every year?
Not frequent at all if the proper materials are used. Holliston has not had major rehab, and it's more than a decade. I think it's 12 years there. So I mean, it may be that frequently, but it should not be every few years. Ours actually has been, and that's, I think, partly the material that was used. And Robert talks about the actual construction being a little bit bowl shaped. And so it's actually collecting water as opposed to shedding water. And that's unfortunate too. But if materials are added, I think it'll be easier to regrade appropriately.
Two things. One, I think when it was being built with Iron Horse and all that, I think there was some talk that it would be like a 10-year surface. So we're not quite there yet. I forget exactly the number of years, but we're not that far off. And given the other problems with Iron Horse, I'm not surprised that it's less than advertised.
Yeah, but Iron Horse was not involved ultimately in the project.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe that was, maybe their proposal was not the one that was.
I don't recall their proposal, but ultimately they weren't involved. Yeah.
In any case, the other thing I wanted to say was just I rode a road bike over it, a week ago, and it's rideable. You have to kind of know where that little washout area is. Just be a little careful. But other than that, it's certainly usable. I think the bigger question is that you want to prevent future deterioration and get ahead of it before it gets to a point where you really have to do more major fixes. Yeah.
My question had to do with it. It's every day it's a marketing tool. Anybody who rides that trail is going to say, I had a great time, or I had an awful time, and recommend it. So I just wanted to be clear about what I don't want to happen. What I would like not to happen is someone rides the trail for the first time and say, this is terrible, and then spreads that word. So if you're saying that, you know, when we look at it very technically, you know, and give it a rating from 1 to 10, and we know why we're saying it's a 7. But if a kid gets on there and goes off slides because of the soft cement, he's going to say this sucks and not use it again.
I think it's primarily a rainy day
Okay.
issue, right? That's, I mean, in other cases, I think it's
So
pretty good. I
Ed,
mean,
when your
Fisher
signage
Trailhead
is
very
full
good for
when
us.
raining.
Yeah, all right.
Well, I think, you know,
Just drive
what
over
we're
the
hearing, and Adam's right, and we all have seen it, we've talked about it, you know, for years now, back when I was on this committee many years ago, but some storm drains empty into this area. So the area that Jerry mentioned, the soft area, is because of stormwater. So every time we're in a surcharge rain event, like the one we had last week when we got 1.37 inches of rain in a couple hours, there's no preventing that storm drains empty into this area. I think, as James mentioned, putting proper materials and topping this entire path so it's firmer would be the solution, but that's going to be a pretty expensive proposition. But I think, like Dimitri says, we got to sell that to say we've had 8 years now of good times on this trail. It needs some work, and that work is regrading and maybe a top off material, a compaction with those proper spec materials that Holliston's had so good luck with, because we've seen that this is loose material. Secondarily, we've talked about for many years now, Deb, water sewer drains, others, about fixing some of those storm drain outlets and encompassing them with riprap or some sort of stone holder so that when they do surcharge, they don't add to these issues. Because I think, like Adam said, like everybody's seen, the path's a 7.5. Again, it's got a lot of value to it. The connections will be better, will have more value. It's great for walkers and neighborhood people. But like you said, Jerry, one kid hits that loose sand from after a rainstorm and skins their knee up, and that's all it takes. So I think there's many things that we need to think about for long-term maintenance that we need to talk about, propose, and talk to, you know, again, position into a budget so that when we hit that 10-year mark, maybe we're asking for a bigger ask that can take care of many of these different things. And again, I think the biggest thing that we have all seen for years with this trail is DPW prepares a big meal for the community. Everybody's at the seat. But when we're asked to not only prepare the meal, but give appetizers and desserts with the same amount of staff, the meal becomes sloppy, the appetizers don't taste well, and the dessert usually sucks. So I think we got to understand that we only have economy of scale. We have open positions everywhere right now. Everybody's bleeding at the seam. So we need to outsource and come up with programs that will do this for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we really need to think about over the next year or two. And it sounds to me like fixing the stormwater, topping the path, regrading, maybe doing a couple of touches would be a capital request and a dollar figure that we can tackle many different things and sell that as a 10-year maintenance, the 10th year maintenance proposal. And I see John smiling, so I don't know if there's hope for this funding, but that would be I think the best plan of attack.
And I think that's really an interesting way to package it. Just a couple of comments. I don't know the actual installation of the stone dust process initially, but what we've learned from other trails, including Holliston, is even though it's stone dust, it's not paving material. Using a paving machine is the best way to actually do it. So that's one thing. Secondly, you may recall, Ed, that 2 summers ago, I think it was, we had the Norfolk County mosquito control folks out in conjunction with DPW, and they did redo that storm drain or that storm outlet and put riprap and so forth. And I think that's been effective. Well, on that side, I thought it was. Now, upstream from there, on the south side, I guess it is, there is kind of ledge almost right up to the trail. And Robert comments on that problem because there is not really a drainage ditch on that side. And he has a specific suggestion, which they've implemented in Holliston, which is worth considering as part of that package, to actually lay something underneath and across. And yes, that's not something DPW is going to do in an afternoon. It's going to be part of a larger contract.
Does this
That was
sound
why-
like,
Sorry.
go ahead, Adam.
I was just gonna say that, James, that was why I was asking about the frequency, because it seems like this is not an annual budget increment necessarily, right? So maybe it is more palatable. I don't know about town mechanisms, but if it's more of a capital expense, and for what it's worth, Ed, we greatly appreciate the stuff that you do have to do annually, the cutting and the tree work. I mean, that makes a big difference. It's immediately noticeable. So
Yeah.
don't want to mess with that.
I guess
Yeah.
my thoughts are, it definitely sounds like around the 10-year mark, this trail is going to need some decent work. So what if we just on a much smaller scale put together a proposal like the athletic field fund, where money gets put into it every year, but it's not necessarily a budget item and it's not necessarily a capital project. So that when it does come up, while we will probably still have to go out to bid, it's just we're preparing and putting money towards it, like a savings account in a way. I don't know exactly how that works on the Dave Davidson side of things, or FinCom side of things, but it sounds like that makes more sense than every 10 years going back to the town with the same capital project, which is really maintenance.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't know the mechanisms either, but it would be great to have almost like an escrow account is what you're talking about, that over time funds get in and then when needed, it's there.
And we do that through town meeting appropriations to a variety of funds for a variety of future projects. I think that absolutely, Stacy, I would check in with Dave Davison and see what his suggestion is as far as the mechanics of this go. Because I know that there has been in recent years a sort of a feeling that, okay, we have and have continued to establish more and more funds for specific future purposes as a way of saving. Now, in concept, it's great. The question is how many funds, and I know we have a lot, and I know it's subject. It'll be up for discussion starting next week at town meeting again. I'm sure somebody will bring up we have more and more funds. That's okay. The question is, how do we want to manage these, and what's the best way? And that's where you reaching out to Dave Davison is, I think, the way to go.
I agree. It was brought up at the League of Women Voters the other night in my breakout room. Someone said, what are all these slush funds the town has? And I think Mary Ann Cooley corrected that these aren't slush funds. These are either stabilization funds or rainy day funds when we have an excess of free cash, like this year to the tune of $10 million because of all the federal and state aid, and we've been the recipient of all these monies, that we take that free cash excess and we put it into different funds so that we have a well thought out plan. And I think we're very fortunate in this town that we have such incredible minds on the finance committee and the select board that have thought this out really well. We talked about the other night showing town meeting what our funds are, what the balances of these funds are, and then lastly, what are our targets for these funds and why do we have targets for funds? And I think that, again, that would be a Dave Davidson, Kate thing, but it does seem to make sense, Stacy. It's a good point.
All right. Anything left on this meeting? Any other comments or suggestions or other before we move on to topics for future meetings? Great. Topics for future meetings. Ed, have you ever heard Chris Gerstle this quiet? Like, what's happening? I don't know what's going on over there. I don't
His computer
understand.
must not be working
It's
today.
like broken.
Yeah.
I'm nervous
That's just a
because I have
picture.
to meet with you tonight, Stacy, and I want to waste all the things now. We've got a busy park and rec meeting tonight, so that's why.
I think
I
you
didn't
should
think
flip
that-
it. You should be live now and quiet later.
I didn't think that was really Chris Gerstle. I thought it was like an automatron like figure that was just moving around on the screen.
Believe me, I think a lot of people would love to have a cardboard cutout of me, so don't worry.
All right,
Stacy.
topics for future meeting. Jerry.
I bring it up each time about the signage through the forest, town forest. You always said that it needs to be done. I forget who brought it up, 2-3 months ago. I don't have the notes as to, was anybody going to see something? Talk to anybody about that? Or is there no longer a need for a better signage through the town forest to the trail?
There,
James?
I mean, there is a need, and as Dimitri has mentioned, there was a sign on the trail, which he has, look at this. I'm looking at John Bulian's stuff. I would actually expand the signage question to the whole trail, because we've talked about more signage on the whole trail and stuff on the kiosk if and when it's been repaired and so forth. So that is a topic, I think, that has been lingering for forever, and we've never actually installed appropriate signage along the trail, including the town forest. And
So, and Debbie, I asked Fabian to reach out to you, and I don't know if he has reached out to you or Clay, but upon cleaning the conference room last week, I unearthed quite a few signs.
Yeah, I know
And
about the,
So I don't know if that's helpful in the short term, but you guys can talk offline. We found a bunch of, Patty was a saver. We found some things.
yeah, I, yeah,
Well, let
Yeah.
me ask you, I have a young, very responsible gentleman that works with me, volunteering all the time. He just reached out to me, has 56 more hours. He's looking for projects. If you have signs, I can give James the assignment and he will take care of it. I don't know if they've already been made. And again, forgive me for coming in late to this conversation. Deb, did you ever get the CPC monies to work with a design firm to actually come up with a sign campaign, or was that money
Yeah.
ever approved? It was.
$6,000.
Okay.
So I've been working with Park and Rec to try to get the Trails Committee going again, because I would like to have them involved kind of with this process from the beginning. So that's what we're working on now. I gave Kate an update earlier this week on where what our plans are. So we do still plan on having them probably later in the summer to meet with us, give us a presentation, and start that process. And then we would be looking for funds, obviously, for the new signage. So that's where we're at with that.
Very good.
so maybe at our next meeting, if signage is on the agenda, we can actually identify specifically what signs, like, what they should say and where they should be. I mean, I don't
Well,
think we've actually done that.
That's part of this whole study.
Oh, I see.
That is part of the design and the identification and determining, where we're missing signage, where we need
Okay.
additional kiosks. And then I'm going to need to get the funding for all of that. So that is in our wheelhouse, and it is, I anticipate, maybe August that we'll have everything together and start that process.
That sounds like a much broader project than just the rail trail, the bike trail, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it's,
Do you have specific direction in term to sign the forest with trails specifically to the bike trail?
no, this
And
is,
I think we need to make that real clear. That's what we're talking about, at least at this particular meeting. We need signage that specifically helps people, guide them to the rail trail through the forest.
right. Well, we were looking for an overall design to make the trails and the markings all cohesive so that they aren't different at each location. And also updating the mapping, getting an electronic version so people can come up to a kiosk and download the map, the trail map for that particular trail. So it's overall just looking for a cohesive. So, just picking one area like the town forest at this point really doesn't make much sense when we're going to be coming up with an overall theme shortly.
Okay, as long as you have input from this committee or whoever, you should be the right person to develop the signage that shows people how to get there and on the trail. That's great.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be getting feedback and, definitely be looking to this group and other groups. Once we get to that point of
Right.
choosing signs.
Stacy, when you said you found signs, are any of them like rail trail relevant? Or are these?
Mostly forest, some Ridge Hill. I don't know, they're metal signs that are about 4 by 6. Or they're bigger than that, I'm sorry. They're like a 11 by 17 size.
Mhm.
Oh, I haven't seen those signs that you're
So
talking. I saw
they're
all the
bright
mark-
yellow. You basically, it looks like you nail them into a tree.
All right, we'll have to have a field trip over to your office, maybe
Sure.
next. I'll let you know.
All right, sounds good.
I have one question that I don't know who may know the answer. So the Volante, Carol Brewster property sign, we've talked about this, Ed, way back when, was either destroyed or removed, for Carol
Right.
Brewster.
Yeah.
And so I've been getting, emails from Volante, asking when it's going to be, when we're going to put a new sign up, that they had talked to Matt Varrell about it. It's been that long. And I noticed on the, I don't know if it's the deed for the property, but it requires that the town maintain that sign in place as part of the entire process. So I've been trying to find out where the funds came from for the original sign and just trying to find out how to replace it. As you know, I have no budget to do these things as far as replacement, but I didn't know if anyone would have maybe known where the funds came from for the original sign.
I don't, but we have been talking about this for years. I believe
Yes.
Matt was working on this, and I told him whenever you get the sign, just let us know. We'll put it up for you. And that's as much as I heard. That was like
Yeah,
6 years ago. So again,
Yep.
we should go back to give us a sign, we can hang it. But I thought Matt had the sign or purchased the sign, but this is going back many years. So I don't know.
I know. I have no documents.
He was actually making the sign. Matt would know because he and I spoke about it ad nauseum, and sure enough, 2022, there's still no sign there. So I have no idea what that was left with conservation. Unfortunately, it's too bad.
Okay, yeah, I brought it up to Janet, the chair of our commission, and she didn't know either. And she said, maybe you're gonna need to request CPC funds for it. So I just didn't know if anyone knew anything about it. Okay,
I'll look in here too, Deb, to see if there's anything. James?
Whether you answer now or it's on the agenda for next time, I just wanted to bring up again the playground issue, which we've spoken about before near the Fisher Trailhead. And Stacy, I know you have a master plan for playground improvement, maintenance and so forth, and that you have a lot on that list. And I think you mentioned at the last meeting that what might be feasible here is some kind of climbing structure initially or something like that. I'm wondering if that's on the back burner still, or is that worth talking about in the near term? And along with that, we have talked about the storybook walk installation, I think on the opposite side of the rail trail from the trailhead parking area. And that's something I'm still very interested in, and I think would be an attraction for young families. And I'm not sure. And I believe you mentioned once, Stacy, that the library actually received some funding for that. And I'm happy to, step away if that's in process, or to keep bothering people if that's helpful.
So I think we should definitely put it on the agenda for next meeting, because we're nearing 10 o'clock on this. Also, that is something I want to look into. It was not a high priority, and we had a Claxton playground concern that we had to take care of, so it definitely got backburnered now. But We also, I actually am walking to a meeting in a few minutes with the new library director, so I can touch base with her about where they are on that process for the storybook. And between now and our next meeting, I'll try and get some quotes for, when I say climbing structure, I mean like logs on the ground, like
Oh, okay.
very low things, nothing
Okay.
too vertical, because we are just trying to get ahead of the maintenance issues of our current playgrounds, and so we don't want to put anything that requires any maintenance. But there are some low bouldering type items for toddlers that would be enjoyable for them.
Yeah, I know it's a low priority, but I just wanted to keep it on the list.
It's on my list. It's just not very high.
Yeah, okay.
So our next meetings I have so far are July 13th and October 19th. I did send out calendar holdings for those. So if anybody, as we get closer, I'll send another reminder about a month out. And then if we need to make any adjustments because it's the middle of summer, we can do that. But I'll send a reminder mid-June. Sound good?
Very good.
All right, excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
you.
have a good spring. Talk to you in the
Thank you.
summer.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.